In part 2 of our Q&A with cybersecurity expert Francis West, we discussed simple actions we can all take to be more cyber safe, what to do if you receive a suspicious text, and why Francis would avoid non-high street banks. Francis is the CEO of Security Everywhere, a company which helps SMEs to secure their money, data, and reputation with managed security services. He serves on several security panels, including for the Home Office, and is on a mission to educate small businesses on cyber to help keep their operations safe. What are some simple actions we should all take to be more cyber safe?
Well, the best thing is to get proper mobile security. That's the best thing, because again, I spoke to you before we started today, how easily people now get infected. I mean, there are now something like 68,000 last report of infected apps sitting on Apple Store, Microsoft, and Google Store, which is insane, right? So people don't know what they don't know until they know, which is too late. So my top tip will be to get proper mobile security, number one. Number two is to, of course, look at the applications that they run. In other words, delete anything on there that you haven't used maybe for a year or 2 years. Number three, a lot of people use WhatsApp, right? And they send sensitive information from their clients to them, from them to their clients, and between each other, and then their WhatsApp account gets hacked. And I'll tell you how easy it is, because we just dealt with the case on the way here. So my advice there is to turn on two-factor authentication on your WhatsApp account. People didn't even know it exists. It takes a minute to set up. Number two, there's a new feature out as well, is to set up app lock. So if you go into settings, find app lock, and then app lock, you can turn on Face ID. So even if somebody knows your code, they still can't unlock your WhatsApp account because they don't have your face with them. So that's another way to do that. And then other areas, for instance, is to look at, especially people using iPhones. I always have fun with this, but I get people to go into settings and go to passwords. And if you look under passwords, it'll actually show you under security recommendations how many compromised passwords are sitting on your iPhone right now. And people don't have a clue. But if it's actually telling you that, listen, your Amazon account and your LinkedIn account and all these accounts have been hacked, and still haven't changed the password. But of course, the best thing there is to use a enterprise password manager on your phone, because then you don't have to worry about this stuff, because then it sits in a secure vault instead of just sitting on a phone. And then of course the other top tip for me would be never ever ever to use public Wi-Fi, because I've got a brilliant app on my phone, which is my party piece, and I can actually, when I go to an event or go to a hotel, I can scan everybody that's currently connected to the Wi-Fi, and if I have the right tools with me, I can see the data flying through the air. So rather use 4G or 5G. If you've got a laptop, rather connect to the phone's the hotspot, but never connect to the public Wi-Fi. Otherwise, you're just waiting for stuff to happen, which is all avoidable.
Are non-high street banks safe to use?
I've got case study after case study after case study where I won't name them, the non-high street banks, where some of our friends and clients have been hacked and they never ever got their money back. Now, I don't know if you know this, but there is what's the right word? There's almost like a gentleman's agreement between the high street banks that if people get hacked, and I'll tell you who's the best one from my study so far is Lloyds Bank. They are the best. So if you suffer an attack, you're most likely to get your money back if you're with Lloyds, right? Which I think is brilliant. And the list goes down. But if you with these free banks online, I wish you luck. Again, I dealt with another case only yesterday where they got into the account. The guy's lost, a friend of mine, he lost £2,000. And, he's trying to speak to their support and he's getting nowhere. And what really gets my goat up is because when these banks, especially the online ones, when they see the money coming in and going to the same bank account again and again and again and again, surely there should be a red flag that turns on to go, hold on a second, the money goes into this account from different accounts. Why? and especially when people are reporting it straight away. So I want to give you a top tip, and that's, have you ever heard of 152? So 152, this is probably one of the best tips, and I think everybody should put this at the bottom of their emails, especially if you're dealing with finance, right? So imagine you've just made a payment and you think, you know what, I think I might have just paid it straight into the hacker's bank account instead of my customer or supplier's bank account, for argument's sake, or even a friend or family. If you dial 152, you get through to a call sentence. It'll say, are you banking with NatWest, or press 1 for NatWest, 2 for Lloyds, 3 for Barclays, 4 for this. And then if you press, let's say 3 for Barclays, you get straight through to the fraud department. Because those first few minutes after you realize that you've been defrauded, you need to get onto your bank as quickly as possible, and then they can reverse the process. But guess what? These free online banks are not listed on that call center. So for me, it's a top tip. We do a lot of work in property sector, so I was like, please share this with people, because 152 is the one thing that will save you every single time.
Do you think banks should reimburse people who lose money due to online fraud?
You know, sometimes I say yes and sometimes I say no. And I'm going to answer you with a quick story. One of our clients, again, funny enough, they run a small FM company, but that's beside the point. Her mom, she passed away 3 months ago, lived in Canada. Now, she uses a Mac, or used to use a Mac. And sadly, a pop-up came up on a Mac. She clicked on the link. She fell for a investment scam. She lost $800,000, okay? Now, here comes the kicker. Number one, she didn't get her money back from the bank. Number two, that was the inheritance of my customer. Now, this is why I say to people, you know, cybersecurity goes a long way. So you need to protect your parents as well. And I can give you loads of tips, but we'll probably run out of time, how to protect your parents from falling for these type of scams. But coming back to your question about the banks, at the moment, banks are, you know, paying back about 30 to 40%, but come October this year, 2024, they're going to be forced to pay back 80 to 90%. Now, that's good and bad. It's good for the consumer, but really bad for them at the same time, because they're going to have to recoup the money. But number one. Number two, the other problem is that people are going to become even more laxy-daisy. They're going to go, oh, well, you know, if I make a mistake and I pay somebody 50 or 80, 100,000 pounds, I'm going to get my money back. And I think that's a problem. So I think where people, I mean, especially now, if you, like our bank with Barclays, right? Barclays is asking you 3 times, are you sure, are you sure, are you sure? If people still go and make the payment, I don't think they should get their money back. That's my personal view. But for me, coming back to the other point is that the banks must have the technology to see, because you try and open a bank account tomorrow, right? It's not that easy. It's really hard. You've got to provide so much information, but these hackers and scammers can create a bank account like this, and they can get thousands or millions of pounds going into that bank account, and there's no red flag going on. Why?
What should you do if you receive a suspicious text?
If somebody gets a dodgy text, and this happens a lot, okay? Like, I mean, every single second of the day, times, whenever I do my talks, I ask people to put their hand up. Who's received a funny or dodgy text in the last 7 days? And everybody puts their hands up, right? And I'm like, so how do you deal with it? Oh, I just delete it. I'm like, okay. I said, let me tell you the best way to deal with a dodgy text. Number one, you know, you've got the phone number. So you need to report the number to 7726. Now, 7726, if you look at the keypad on the phone, spells the word spam, so you've got no reason to ever forget this. So you report it to 77, that's step number one. Step number two, you go to a brilliant website called Who Called Me. And if you paste the number into Who Called Me, you'll see other people who have already reported that number as a phishing attack or O2 scam or Amazon scam. So now you've confirmed that this is it, and you reported yourself. A lot of people say, oh, don't bother reporting, nothing's going to happen. No, it does. I told you I serve on the panel with the Home Office. You know, especially now with action fraud, they're going to bring down the time of taking those numbers down to hopefully down to an hour. So if you report it, the chances of somebody else getting scammed is reduced. So think about other people that you're going to help by reporting it. So you've done the 7726, you've reported on Who Called Me, The next thing you do is you block the number. So if you go to the bottom, it says block number. And the fourth thing you do is you delete the message. Some people are so, let me share it with my wife or daughter on next door. I said, you're mad, because sometimes those links include what we call a payload. So if you click on the link, you infect the machine. So why would you want to forward that infected link to other people?
Should you ever pay ransomware attackers?
So we see this a lot, and a lot of people, and again, ransom attacks are massively on the increase again. It went down a bit last year, now it's going up again. So just for clarity, what happens if you suffer a ransom attack? It means that all your data is encrypted, even if it's in the cloud. People say, I'm in the cloud, it's safe. No, it's not safe. Okay, so your data gets encrypted, and now they leave you a lovely little note saying, unless you pay me 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 Bitcoin, you're not going to get your data back. Now, let me tell you, it takes 3 days to set up a Bitcoin account. So you're already now down to 3 days, right? So what you need to do is, obviously you need to report it to Action Fraud and potentially the National Cybersecurity Center. And if you're lucky enough to have cyber insurance, then they'll deal with everything for you, which I always highly recommend. But my advice is 99% of the time, I would say never pay the ransom. But there's a 1% where you don't have a choice, where you have to pay it. The problem is, if you do pay it, your chances of getting the data back is maybe 10 to 20%. And here comes the other kicker. If you pay the ransom, you are 80% more likely to get done again within a 2-year period. Why? Because the fact that you paid it, you then get added to a list on the dark web, which we can explain, which means you're now on a sucker list. Like, you're going to get done again. So my advice is, please don't pay it, because you've got no guarantee. Your best way to recover from a ransom is you need to go back to backups. Problem is, how do you know if that backup is clean? A lot of people make backups, but they don't realize that the infection is sitting on that backed up data already. So when you do a recovery, it'll just roll back to the ransom. So the best way to fix that is to make sure it doesn't happen in the first place.